Perhaps you've asked yourself, not just once, but many times in your quietest moments, how do I know if I've truly escaped them? Not merely leaving physically, but genuinely freeing your soul from the invisible chains they once skillfully wrapped around you. Because the truth is, breaking free from a narcissist isn't like ending a normal relationship. It's more like unraveling a delicate spider web, where each thread is woven from sweet promises mingled with emotional blows, empty yet enticing apologies, and subtle accusations that gradually distort your reflection in the mirror. It's a silent yet fierce battle. No one sees the bleeding wounds. No one hears the silent cries for help. But day after day you feel yourself fading, doubting your intuition, losing your voice, forgetting what it means to be naturally and genuinely loved. Then, one day, you walk away, perhaps after a sleepless night, or after an argument that seemed trivial yet became the final straw. You step out that door, but have you truly found freedom? Or are you still haunted by lingering questions? Was I wrong? Am I really as bad as they made me believe? Escaping a narcissist isn't just about physical separation. It's a journey of rebuilding yourself, carefully untangling each strand of emotional webs, healing wounds you might not even realize you're carrying. Along this path, there are signs, subtle yet unmistakable, that you've reclaimed control of your life. In today's video, we'll explore 7 undeniable signs that you have completely overcome the narcissist, not by playing their game, but by refusing to engage at all. Not through revenge or exposure, but by reclaiming your own narrative and stepping into a new chapter, one where you are the author, one where you finally live as your authentic self. And I'm to tell you this from the start, this journey isn't easy, but every step you take, every time you choose yourself over falling back into old patterns is a victory, a profound and lasting victory, deeper than anyone else can see. So, if you've ever wondered, have I truly broken free? Stay with me until the end of this video. Because the answer doesn't lie within them. It lies within you. In the peace, strength and freedom you're steadily reclaiming. If you see yourself on this journey, if you're seeking clarity and validation that you're not alone, subscribe to this channel. Together, we'll build a community rooted in truth, healing, and genuine freedom. Allow me to begin by sharing a truth that perhaps few have ever told you. Breaking free from a narcissist is one of the toughest victories a human being can achieve. Not because you're weak, not because you're easily manipulated, but because their game is deliberately designed to exploit the very best parts of you. A narcissist doesn't control you through physical strength or brute force. They control you by taking hold of what you value most. Your compassion, patience, desire to do the right thing, your deep longing to love and be loved completely. They twist these beautiful qualities into chains. They manipulate, but not always with words. They manipulate with perfectly timed silences, with a cold glance when you desperately seek support, with broken promises intended to keep your hopes alive that someday things will change. They rewrite your story until even you begin to question who you are and what you're worth. This is precisely what sets narcissistic abuse apart. It doesn't leave bruises on your skin, it leaves wounds deep within your soul. Wounds that outsiders often struggle to comprehend. In American culture, where personal freedom and the right to live authentically are deeply cherished values, it's paradoxical that so many individuals find themselves trapped in relationships they cannot even name as confinement. The chains aren't visible, it's an invisible prison, constructed out of rationalizations, distorted expectations, and seemingly minor compromises. You might live in the land of the free, yet still find yourself imprisoned in a relationship so consuming you no longer recognize yourself. You might have every right to say no, but feel overwhelming fear at the very thought. So, when you finally step outside that prison, when you dare to look back and declare, "I deserve something better," it's more than just the end of a relationship. It's a personal revolution. Because the truth is, when you dare to leave, you don't merely confront the fear of abandonment. You confront every doubt they've planted in you, that you're selfish, that you're not good enough, that if you had just been more patient, things might have been different. And yet, you choose to trust yourself again. Let me make this perfectly clear. This victory isn't easy or swift. It's not like winning a single battle in a single day. It's a journey of carefully dismantling each layer of manipulation, each layer of self-doubt, each layer of the fear of ending up alone. Yet with every layer you peel away, you reclaim another piece of yourself. Each time you refuse to believe their excuses, you reclaim your clarity. Each time you say no, even if your voice trembles, you reclaim your power to decide for yourself. And this is precisely why overcoming narcissistic abuse is a silent yet profound victory. It doesn't require fireworks or loud applause. It's a liberation of your spirit, transforming you from a supporting actor in their drama into the main character of your own story. In today's video, I'll show you 7 unmistakable signs indicating not only that you've left the narcissist behind, but that you have conquered them from within. And this victory, although quiet, will forever belong to you. Sign 1. When they lose control over your emotions. The very first and most telling sign that you've truly defeated a narcissist is when they no longer have control over your emotions. This is the cornerstone of every tactic they use. As long as you're still reacting, still allowing your feelings to be manipulated, they hold the power. But when your emotions are no longer something they can control, when their mood swings no longer shake your inner peace, that's when you've reclaimed your deepest sense of autonomy. At first, you don't even realize you're being controlled. You believe you're just trying to do the right thing, trying to understand them, to empathize with them, to love them enough so the relationship can get back on track. You tell yourself that just a little more patience will fix everything. But what you don't see is that every emotion you feel, every reaction you have, is being orchestrated by them. Every outburst of anger, every moment of silence, every cold shoulder or sudden sweetness, they're all strings pulling you exactly where they want you. Narcissists don't manipulate with force or direct commands. They manipulate with subtle cues, sudden shifts in emotion, making you constantly question, what did I do wrong? What can I do to make them happy again? They keep you teetering on edge, anxious, never feeling quite safe or secure. They convince you that their emotions are your responsibility, that if they're angry, sad, or distant, it must be your fault. But then, one day, it stops. Not because they stop playing their games. They still pout, still use silence as a weapon, still pretend to be vulnerable to reel you back in. But you are different. You have changed. You no longer react the way you used to. You no longer scramble to apologize when they get angry. You no longer feel guilty when they go silent. You no longer feel unsettled when they create distance on purpose. Instead, you stand firm. When they rage, you remain calm. When they suddenly turn sweet, you see through the act. When they withdraw, you no longer feel the urge to close the gap. And the beautiful thing is, you start to feel your own emotions again. No longer manipulated, no longer programmed to soothe them. Instead, you feel sadness, anger, joy, pure, unfiltered, untouched. And that's when you realize they are no longer the center of your emotional world. They no longer hold the power to make you happy or sad, angry or anxious. They can try everything, anger, charm, indifference, playing the victim, but you hold your ground. And to a narcissist, that is unacceptable. Because controlling the emotions of others is what feeds them. When they can't control you, they feel like they're falling apart. They may escalate, they may try more sophisticated tactics, they might pretend to change or beg for forgiveness. But you're no longer hooked. You see it all for what it is, a performance, and you choose not to participate. That is your first victory. That is your first taste of freedom. You no longer need them to change. You no longer need them to validate your worth, because you've taken back control of your own emotions, and that's something they can never reclaim. Scene 2. Their mask begins to crumble when you stop playing along. The second undeniable sign that you've truly defeated a narcissist is when their mask starts to crumble. Not because you confront them directly, but simply because you stop participating in their performance. Narcissists don't live authentically. They hide behind a carefully crafted facade, a charming, flawless, moral persona designed to convince the world, and even themselves, that they are as wonderful as they pretend to be. But that mask is fragile. It can't hold up on its own. It needs constant fuel, validation, admiration, and the compassion of others to stay in place. And once you were part of that system, you fed energy to that mask every time you forgave their contradictions, every time you looked past the cracks in their stories, every time you convinced yourself they didn't mean it, that they were just going through a rough patch. And you didn't do this because you were naive. You did it because you had compassion, because you had hope, because you believed in the human capacity for change. But then comes a moment when you begin to truly see the fabrication in the picture they've painted. You stop applauding the performance. You stop playing the savior, the sufferer, the supporting role they've cast you in. You step away, and when you step away, their mask starts to crack. At first, the cracks are subtle. They become more irritable, quick to accuse you without reason, insisting that you have changed, that you are ungrateful. But in truth, the only thing that's changed is that you've stopped fueling the mask they wear. Without an audience, without someone to mirror back the idealized image they want to uphold, that mask starts to falter. And when that mask begins to crumble, panic sets in. They cannot let it fall. Because the mask isn't just how they perform for the world, it's how they avoid facing the truth about themselves. Without it, they would have to confront their greatest fear, the emptiness within. They scramble for a new audience, a new source of validation to keep the illusion alive. You might hear about a new friend, a new partner, a new relationship, all desperate attempts to maintain the act. But you stand outside of it now, watching it all unfold. And the most powerful thing is, you no longer feel the need to participate. You don't explain. You don't argue to defend yourself. You don't feel the urge to prove anything. You see the play for what it is, and you choose to step off the stage. The collapse of their mask isn't something you force. They do it to themselves when no one holds it up for them anymore. You simply step back, refuse to be their audience, refuse to play the role they wrote for you. And that's what causes the collapse. Not with noise, not with drama, but with the quiet weight of truth. The mask simply can't bear the pressure of its own falsehood. Practice is a silent but profound victory. You don't need to expose them. You don't need to unmask them in front of everyone. You just stop believing the story they tell. Stop feeding their performance, and the mask begins to fall under its own weight. When that happens, you know you've reclaimed your power. And most importantly, no one can keep a mask in place forever when no one else believes in it. Sign 3. You no longer fear their anger or punishment. One of the clearest signs that you've truly defeated the narcissist is when your fear dissolves. You no longer fear their explosive outbursts, nor do you dread the cold, calculated punishments they once used to control you. And remember, fear is the narcissist's ultimate weapon. When they lose that, they have nothing left to hold over you. Think back to the days when you were still caught in their whirlwind. When they got angry, your heart would race, your body would tense, and you'd scramble to calm the storm, apologizing even when you weren't at fault, sacrificing your feelings, your opinions, your own needs, just to maintain a fragile peace. But that peace was never real. It was only the quiet before another inevitable eruption. Narcissists are cunning. They know exactly how to instill fear of punishment without ever raising a hand or uttering a direct threat. A cold glare, prolonged silence, a razor-sharp comment. These were enough to make you shrink back into submission. Over time, you trained yourself to avoid conflict at all costs. You edited your behavior, your emotions, even your thoughts, to prevent triggering their anger. But then, one day, something shifts. Their anger no longer frightens you, not because they've stopped getting angry, not because they've changed, but because you've come to see it for what it truly is. You've recognized it as just another tactic, another tool of control, meant to keep you trapped in their cycle. And when you see it clearly, it loses its power. This shift doesn't happen overnight. The first few times your heart might still race, you might still feel that pang of unease, but you no longer act from those old habits. You let their rage pass right by you. You stay grounded, and each time you do, you grow stronger. You realize you can endure their displeasure without betraying yourself. The narcissist feels this change. They sense they're losing their grip, not physically losing you, but losing the emotional control they once held, and that terrifies them more than anything else. They may escalate, unleashing even more intense outbursts, or they might swing to the other extreme, playing the victim, pretending to be weak to lure you back in, but you no longer respond. When you can look at their rage like an old, worn-out player, like a child throwing a tantrum in the middle of a supermarket, and you feel no need to engage, that's when you've reclaimed your power. You can endure their disapproval without trading your truth for the illusion of peace. You accept discomfort as a necessary part of reclaiming your boundaries, of reclaiming yourself. That is the third sign. When their anger and their punishments no longer shake you, when you stand firm even in the face of their fury, when you no longer feel the need to appease or please them, that's when you know you've shattered their strongest weapon. And when that weapon no longer works, you are truly free. Sing 4. They seek new supply, but you remain unshaken. One unmistakable sign that you've truly defeated the narcissist is when they rush to find someone else to replace you, a new supply, yet you watch it all unfold without feeling shaken. And this is exactly what they do whenever they feel their control slipping away. For the narcissist, relationships aren't about genuine human connection. They're a means to uphold their image and feed their distorted ego. When you step outside of their control, they don't turn inward. They don't reflect on why things fell apart, and they certainly don't confront their inner wounds. Instead, they immediately dive into finding someone new, anyone willing to play the role you've refused to continue, a new audience, a fresh admirer, a new mirror to reflect back the perfect image they so desperately need to believe is real, and they make sure you know about it. They want you to see, they want you to witness just how quickly they've moved on. It might be through affectionate photos splashed across social media, or through glowing stories about this new person, described as perfect, understanding everything you supposedly weren't. This is an old tactic, but an incredibly effective one if you're still entangled in the trauma bond, that emotional chain binding you to the chaotic love-hate cycle. At first, it might sting. A twinge of jealousy, a moment of self-doubt. You ask yourself, was I too harsh? Did I make a mistake? Have they really changed? These questions echo in your mind, planting seeds of doubt. And that's exactly what they want. They want you to circle back, to question your decision, to come crawling for their validation once again. But then, a moment comes, maybe because you've been through this cycle enough times, when you realize you're no longer affected the way you once were. You see the photos, you hear the stories, and instead of feeling pain, you recognize the charade for what it is. You know this is just another act. The new person isn't a soulmate, isn't the solution to their deep-seated wounds. They're just another player in the same repeating script. And you've played that part before. You know exactly how the story ends. You see the pattern. The excessive love bombing at first, followed by the gradual criticism, devaluation, and manipulation. No one, no relationship can withstand the constant pressure of endlessly applauding, endlessly propping up the narcissist's fragile image. Eventually, the truth surfaces, and the new supply will face the same reality you once did. And the most beautiful part, you no longer feel the need to prove anything. You no longer need to speak out, to explain, to justify yourself. You're outside of the game, watching as a spectator, but no longer a participant. That calm detachment, is your power. When you are no longer drawn into their replacement tactics, when you no longer let jealousy or self-doubt steer your emotions, you've broken yet another link in the chain of manipulation, and that terrifies them more than anything, because without your reaction, their performance loses its purpose. This is the fourth sign. When they parade around a new supply trying to convince you they've found real happiness, but you remain unmoved, uninterested in reclaiming their attention or validation, that's when you know you are truly free. Sign 5. You feel an unshakable inner peace. There comes a moment in your healing journey when you realize that you haven't just physically walked away from the narcissist, but your soul, your spirit, has broken free from their grip. That moment doesn't arrive with fanfare. It's not marked by a dramatic milestone. Instead, it comes as a quiet yet profound calm that slowly spreads through every part of you. You realize you're no longer living in survival mode. You're no longer waking each day with that vague, persistent anxiety. No longer bracing yourself for emotional explosions. No longer tiptoeing on eggshells just to maintain a fragile, suffocating peace. This peace feels different from anything you ever experienced during that relationship. It's not the artificial calm that follows an argument, a fleeting sense of relief, always overshadowed by the looming threat of the next storm. It's not the eerie silence of the Cold War days, when you strained to figure out what you'd done wrong. This is real stillness, a solid, unshakable foundation that no one else's moods or judgments can disturb. You come to see that you no longer need to prove your worth. You no longer seek validation from anyone to feel good enough. You no longer crave apologies, praise, or change from the narcissist to feel whole. You feel complete from within. And perhaps the most surprising part of this piece, at first, it can feel unsettling. You're used to chaos. You're used to having your emotions yanked back and forth between affection and devaluation, between hope and despair. When all of that noise falls away, there's an emptiness, a space that feels almost too quiet. A part of you may even wonder, is this real? Or is this just the calm before another storm? But as the days pass, that quiet becomes familiar. You start to feel safe in it. You begin to realize that this is the feeling you had longed for all along, yet never found while you were trapped in that relationship. It's not the adrenaline-fueled highs and lows of manipulation cycles. You'd tastes true peace, a place where you can breathe deeply, listen to yourself, and live aligned with your own values without fear of punishment. And from that place of peace, you begin to rebuild your life. You choose healthy relationships, connections with people who don't ask you to sacrifice yourself to be loved. You learn to trust your intuition again, to honor your emotions without filtering them through the narcissist's lens of judgment. Most importantly, you stop defining yourself through their eyes. You no longer care what they think of you, not out of hostility or revenge, but because you finally understand that their opinion never reflected the truth about you. It was always a projection of their own desires, fears, and illusions. This is the fifth sign, when genuine peace becomes your inner foundation, when you are no longer pulled into the narcissist's chaos, when you can stand strong in stillness without feeling empty. That's when you know you are truly free. But because freedom isn't the absence of a relationship, it's the presence of peace within your soul. And when that peace is no longer conditional on anyone else, when it comes from deep within you, that is the deepest victory of all. Sig 6. Their opinions no longer define you. There comes a point in your healing journey when you realize that the narcissist's opinions no longer carry weight in your mind. It's the moment you stop measuring your worth through their praise or their criticism. You're no longer swept into the whirlpool of self-doubt, no longer feeling the need to justify yourself or reshape who you are just to meet the ever-changing, unclear standards they've imposed on you. Once upon a time, every remark they made, whether it was a half-hearted compliment or a subtle critique, could leave you confused, second-guessing yourself, feeling like you needed to change, to try harder, to somehow be worthy. They never had to shout. They never had to give direct orders. A raised eyebrow, a lingering comment like, "You really think that's a good idea?" That was all it took to make you question yourself. Slowly, you handed over to them the authority to define who you were, the right to shape your sense of self-worth. But then, one day, that power begins to fade. You hear their words, maybe a critique, maybe a veiled judgment, but it washes over you like a passing breeze. You don't feel the urge to argue. You don't feel the need to fix yourself or explain. You recognize that what they think about you doesn't define who you are. And here's the most important part. You didn't reach this place through hatred or rebellion. You arrived here through clarity, through the deep understanding that they never truly saw you. Every opinion they offered, whether positive or negative, was filtered through their own distorted needs, their illusions, their ego. They praised you when you played the role they wanted, and they criticized you when you stepped outside of that mold. And now you finally see you are no longer a character in the story they've written. When their opinions lose their grip on you, you feel a profound sense of liberation. You no longer loop their words in your mind, dissecting every syllable, tormenting yourself with questions like, "Am I too sensitive? Am I wrong?" Instead, you listen to yourself. You trust your intuition, your lived experiences, your own sense of worth. And when someone judges, misinterprets, or misunderstands you, you know that's their issue, not yours. The narcissist will sense this shift. They know they've lost their power to shape how you see yourself. They might try to pull you back in, spinning new stories, smearing your name to others, creating situations designed to provoke you into defending yourself. But you don't need to do that anymore. You know the truth. And that is enough. That is the sixth sign. When their opinions no longer influence your sense of self, when you no longer feel the need to prove, to fix, or to win their approval to feel worthy, that's when you've reclaimed control over your own self-image. From that place, you begin to rebuild your life by your standards, no longer distorted by someone else's warped view. That is spiritual freedom. That is inner wholeness, unquote. And that is a victory they can never take back. Thing 7. You feel grateful for your own journey. The final sign, and perhaps the deepest, that you've truly defeated the narcissist is when you feel gratitude. Not for what they did, but for the person you've become through it all. This isn't a superficial kind of gratitude. It's not about slapping a coat of false positivity over your wounds. This is real, profound gratitude, born from the awareness that this experience forged you. It forced you to face the darkest corners of yourself. It helped you reclaim a strength you may never have known you possessed. You no longer hold resentment. You no longer crave revenge. You no longer wait for acknowledgement or an apology. Instead, you feel a peaceful closure. You look back at that relationship with all its chaos, pain, and manipulation, and you see clearly that you have risen above it. You've grown. You're no longer the person who was trapped in that toxic cycle. You no longer define yourself by what happened to you, but by how you stood up, how you moved forward, and how you rebuilt your life. This gratitude isn't for the narcissist. You don't need to forgive them to find peace. This gratitude is for your journey. For every small step you took, for every time you refused to turn back, for every painful moment when you chose yourself. You're grateful that you didn't abandon who you were meant to be. You are grateful that you've learned to trust your intuition again, even though it was once distorted. You are grateful that you've reclaimed your voice, even though it was once silenced. You are grateful that you've rediscovered your worth, even though it was once denied. And, most importantly, you are grateful that you've learned to love yourself again, not for anyone else's sake, but because you deserve to be loved, to be valued, to live a life that is true and whole. When you feel this kind of gratitude, the narcissist holds no power over you anymore. Not because you've forgotten what happened, but because you've turned pain into power, wounds into wisdom. You are no longer trapped in the past. You are no longer seeking validation or explanations from them. You've stepped out of the loop and into a more complete version of yourself. This is the final sign. When you can look back on everything and feel grateful, not for the suffering, but for having made it through, for having survived, for having grown. When you realize that you haven't just escaped but evolved, that is your ultimate victory. Not a victory over them, but a victory over the invisible chains that once bound you, the victory of rebirth, the victory of self-respect, of wholeness, of true freedom. As we look back on this journey from those moments when you were caught deep in the web of manipulation to every step where you carefully unraveled each link in the chain, perhaps the most astonishing thing is the peace you now feel. A peace that no one could ever give you and no one can take away, because it comes from within, born from your decision to rise, to trust yourself, to step out of the performance the narcissist once scripted for you. But let me emphasize something vital. This was never about them. It has never been about them. This is your victory, the triumph of the person who was once caught in loops of doubt, fear, and self-abandonment, yet step by step found their way back. Step by step, you rebuilt your life on the foundation of truth, self-respect, and spiritual freedom. There will still be days when old wounds sting, when the echoes of past criticisms resurface, and that's okay. Healing isn't a straight line, but the difference now is you're no longer defined by those moments. Those scars aren't signs of weakness, they are proof of your strength. They remind you of what you've survived. They stand as evidence that you are resilient enough to never return to that place where you were once imprisoned. You didn't need revenge. You didn't need to expose them. Your victory lies in the fact that you no longer need to. You've stepped fully into your own life, with integrity, with restored self-respect, and with a heart that has learned to love itself again. And no one, not the narcissist, not anyone else, can ever take that away from you. If today's message has resonated with you, if you see yourself somewhere along this journey, whether you're just beginning or you've come a long way, leave a comment and share your story, because you are not alone. And perhaps your story will be the light that guides someone else out of their darkness. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you want to continue walking this path of healing with me, this path of building a freer, more meaningful life, one day at a time. There is so much more we'll explore together, the strategies, the lessons, the deep insights that will help you keep growing, keep living aligned with your true worth, because you deserve that freedom. You deserve a life that is no longer defined by fear or the control of anyone else. You deserve to be loved, in the fullest, truest sense of the word. I'll see you in the next video where we'll continue this journey of creating a life that is authentic, grounded, and free.